Okay, so good afternoon. I'm delighted to welcome Juliet Tzabar and David Kleeman, our two guests for the CMC sessions. Juliet is from Plugin Media and also is on the advisory committee for the CMC conference, and David works for David and is the senior vice president there. So Juliet, it's nice to see you again. Could you tell us just a bit about who CMC are and what CMC does every year for the Kids App community?
Sure. So CMC is the Children's Media Conference. Back in the real world, it happens in Sheffield once a year in July. But like so many events, we're virtual this year. Again, will be happening in July, I think over a period of 5 days. It's a gathering of children's media professionals from very diverse areas of children's media, from publishing to games to TV to animation. As I say, yes, happens once a year. The main conference is in July, but there's also a number of events throughout the year, including an animation event in November and a number of webinars, which we'll be having, I think, monthly in the lead up to the conference in July. So it's worth having a look at the website and seeing what we've got coming up.
That's great. And so we're this afternoon going to be discussing where are kids today and why publishers should be there. I mean, it is a somewhat complex world in some ways where kids and different publishers live these days. It's all over the place. But I think we have some guidance here. Perhaps, David, you'd like to start off with just looking into I suppose, all the different areas that you've found. I know you do a lot of research in this, into these sort of questions, and I think you're the man with the data, as it were, for our session today. So please just tell us a bit about David, and then I'd like to hand the screen over to you for your presentation.
Very good. Well, while I'm calling up my slides, let me just say I'm a huge fan of the CMC and one of a very small handful of people, as far as I know, who have been to every children's media conference, every CMC since it was Show Commotion. Many years, and I'm really pleased to have been participating in all of them. So I've titled my talk with my slides with something that we've been thinking about a lot lately, and that's this idea that so many of the things that kids used to do in the real world pre-pandemic, but also even growing before that, have now become digital in their lives. So down on the corner, the way they used to gather on the corner has become up on the server. And you'll see that played out through some of the slides that I'll present. Just the 30-second overview of where this is coming from. David is a research and strategy consultancy and a digital studio based in Leeds. I'm based in the US. I'm the US office. It's 21 years old, or 22, almost 22 years old now. And on the research side, we do bespoke studies for companies. We do strategic work for companies. And on the digital side, we create games, apps, virtual worlds, VR, AR, and we're doing a lot of work right now in Roblox, creating Roblox games. And you'll see why that's important as I go through. The statistics, the data that I'm going to be presenting to you today come from David Trends, which is our twice yearly study of deep dive into what devices kids have, what content they like, how they use all those devices, how they find their way to content in a crowded world. We do 6 months, every 6 months in the US and UK, and then 18 other countries that we visit roughly once a year. And one good thing to know is David Trends does a special focus, and the next special focus coming up is on books and reading. So we should have data on that quite soon. So let's look at the devices that kids own. Most of my data will be US, but this is more of a worldwide slide. And let me say that data slides are always really hard to take in a talk like this. So please, my email address is at the end of this. Please get in touch with me if you'd like the slides. I'm more than happy to share them. You can see that the tablets and smartphones are almost universally available in at least the major developed countries, the US and the UK. Less so in terms of countries like India, and somewhere in the middle for Brazil, France. Some of that has to do with economics. Some of that also has to do with just what families want for their kids, whether they believe that kids should have devices in their lives and at what age. The one that I really want to call out is smart speaker. because that's growing very quickly in our research. And the smart speaker is one of the ways that kids are taking in audiobooks, podcasts. So for a publisher, it's a really important platform to be thinking about going forward. When we look at just the US and UK and ownership of the device, not just access, not mom, can I borrow the smartphone, but actual having one of your own, you can see that about half of US and UK kids own either a tablet or a smartphone, or in some cases both. And you can see that it's much lower numbers for ownership of some of the other devices, but they are growing over time. This is the amazing statistic to me. When in recent, in a year-on-year study from 2019 to 2020, now keeping the pandemic in mind, so keeping in mind that kids have been home much more, kids are spending 3+ days per week using screens. Now, anyone who's heard me speak knows I hate the term screen time, because kids get so many things through screens right now: communication, socializing, games, viewing, reading, learning, digging into the things they're passionate about. It just makes no sense to measure that with a stopwatch. But if you look at that jump, that 11% year-on-year increase, you can see that the pandemic really drove kids back to screens for a number of things. And we'll look at that in more depth in just a second. Now, keep in mind also that this is often multitasking. So when we say that 67% of kids' waking time per week is spent using screens, that doesn't literally mean that there's only a couple hours per day where there's not a screen in their lives. It's much more balanced than that. But they are at times studying on the laptop at the same time as they are communicating with friends on the smartphone. One of the things that we've seen that I think is of critical importance for families is that perspective on what screen time means has changed during the pandemic. And we think this is something that's going to continue going forward. As parents have had more time to watch what their children do on devices, how they spend their time playing, how they spend their time reading, how they spend their time watching or playing games, they've come to see the value in the things that their children choose and how it appeals to them very personally, how they dive deeply into the things that they care much about, how they, in a place like Roblox, they may be creating games as well as playing games. In a place like Minecraft, the way that they think through what they want to build. So parents have started to see content and context, not just screen time. And we think that that's probably going to stay going forward, that they will appreciate more the value of what their children do with screens. Video learning and games have come to dominate. Video has always been the main use for their time on screens. And games has been right around that same level. What's really jumped up in the last year is education and learning activities. We've seen the laptop come out of the closet. They had sort of stowed away the laptop and preferred to learn on the tablet or on the smartphone or even watching videos on TV. But because they've been schooling at home, they've had to bring out the laptop again. And it's seen a rise, not just for school uses, but also for general learning and some play as well. Games and social have taken kids through the last year, and they had been growing fast even before that, but it's only going to continue. I think they have found ways to be social in gaming environments. They've found ways to create, to share, to dig deep into the things that they're passionate about and to share them with their friends. So we really believe that these things that have been rising are going to keep rising. You look at that 40% year-on-year increase in TikTok. That's become, it's one of the most appealing platforms because you can go in for 2 minutes and watch a couple videos. You can go in for half an hour. Actually, if you stay in for about 2 hours, it'll tell you, isn't it about time to go and do something else? It actually delivers a, shouldn't you maybe think about turning this off for a while message. And then Roblox and Minecraft as creative platforms as well as play platforms have grown substantially because you can socialize at the same time as you play and build. So let's look at Roblox specifically. We've been, as I say, been spending a lot of time building Roblox games, but also looking at why it's grown so fast. You look at those statistics at the bottom of the slide here. 32 million daily active users worldwide and 3.6 billion hours of monthly engagement. This platform has been around since 2006. Why is it that only in 2018, 2019, it really soared? Well, part of that has to do with the pandemic, but it was starting even before that, as people discovered that it was a really simple and sort of stress-free platform. You download it once and then you can play everything on it. There's no, oh, well, you have to pay extra for this, so you have to download a plug-in for that, you have to do something extra to get this. You can hang out with your friends there. During the pandemic, we saw kids hosting their birthday parties. They'd all play and then they'd gather in a waiting room. You can do some of the things you can do in Fortnite. You can customize your clothes. You can buy tools that you carry with you. You can spend in it. You can so that you can buy things to improve your game quality or to get you shortcuts during the games. And the most amazing thing has been how it's been used to host concerts and award ceremonies and movie launches and things like that. As publishers, what about a book launch party in Roblox? What about building a space where kids will come and the author will be there in as a Roblox character, launching the book right in that space? Just to emphasize, Roblox is not a game. It is, we think of it as the YouTube of games. And the most compelling statistic to me, not only are there 20 million experiences, but there are 1,700 Lego games on Roblox, not a single one of them created by Lego. So if you have book titles, if you have brands, if you have characters that you generate, you might want to go on Roblox and see if they're there already. And at that point, you have a choice to make as an IP owner. Do I stop this? Do I allow it? Do I actually encourage it? Because we discover more and more, giving young people some space to play with your IP, to play with their favorite characters or stories, actually builds their fandom and makes them feel a part of the brand. Roblox is also growing because it's what we call a proto-metaverse. Metaverse is a term, it's going to be the term of 2021 that you're going to hear a lot about. A metaverse is kind of you see it described here. It is always on, it's global. If you've read or seen the movie of Ready Player One or Snow Crash, that's the ultimate expression of a metaverse, but we're a long way from getting to there. We're not going to live in the metaverse for now. But it does really appeal to kids because it's a place where they can play, they can learn, they can socialize, they can communicate, they can buy things, they can dress up in, in skins, they can create dances, they can, create their own games, all really simply and easily. And that's what the metaverse is going to be all about, is being able to do all the different things you want to do with media and do them all in one place seamlessly. So how does your work, how do publishers' work fit into this emerging world? How do you build now to be able to plug into the metaverse as it arrives? Last point that really is important, every company is in the kids and family business right now. Governments are paying increasing attention to what kids are doing online, the safety protocols, the privacy protocols. This is in Europe, this is in the UK, this is in North America. It is worldwide right now, and there are going to be some major fines. There are going to be some major problems for companies that don't follow this. Part of the reason they've had to pay more attention is because during the pandemic, this down on the corner is up on the server has brought kids to a lot of platforms where they were never really intended to be. Platforms like Discord, which was a gaming platform primarily for adults. Discord took a very powerful, proactive approach. And when they were told you got a lot of kids under 13 on there, they asked, okay, so how do we make it safe? So keep that in mind, that you really need to make sure anything you do in the digital space is safe for kids. Here's how to get in touch with me. Please feel free to request the slides, ask any questions, and look forward to talking.
Great, thanks a lot, David. Just while Juliet's setting up her slides on screen, I'd really like to to ask you about a bit more on Roblox, because it seems to be a bit like Second Life for kids, and where there's another universe where you can do everything and you can meet everyone. Your question was to publishers, what can you do in somewhere like that? I mean, I think one of the questions would be, about whether you're allowed to market or whether you're allowed to be there with commercial products. Is it just about showing kids a brand? I mean, have you found that sometimes I always feel that technology platforms begin and then everyone is interested to present and go within this platform themselves, but actually doing some form of business there, especially in that age group, is extremely difficult.
It can be difficult. You can do business there. You do business in Robux, in the currency of the platform. But one of the elements of a metaverse is that it can exist in both digital and physical space. So for a publisher, let's say, what is a library going to look like in the metaverse? What could a library look like in Roblox? Could you essentially gamify this space where you search for the books that you're looking for? And once you find the book you're looking for, maybe not in Roblox, but in a broader metaverse, could you order it delivered to your house? Could you buy it right there? Could you read it in a digital format, or could you ask to have it in a physical format? I think I will say very clearly that one of the things we've found is direct marketing in something like Roblox. Kids see through it very quickly. They do not want to be sold to. They do not want to be pandered to. But softer marketing, the idea of brands, characters, stories existing in this space. David just launched a game 2 weeks ago for Lol Surprise, the toys for kids. We have had tens of thousands, actually no, hundreds of thousands now of plays, tens of thousands of favorites, and there's no need to say, go out and buy a Lol Surprise. It's just giving kids a chance to play with the characters and brands that they love.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's just getting used to these sort of new arenas, and it's a very different space. For example, for many of the sort of traditional book publishers would find this a very somewhat odd place, perhaps, to be. But I'm sure, have you noticed some publishers already launching books within a place like that, or having reading sessions or other bits that kids can pick up on?
I can't say that I personally have seen it yet. The people in Dubbit who study Roblox more carefully could probably tell you what publishers, or at least specifically what brands and stories are showing up there. I'm sure they're there, and I'm sure it's kids who are creating them for now. And as I say, now is the time for publishers to look and see, am I there? Am I not there? How do I want to be there? What guidelines am I going to set up within the company to make sure that we're reaching kids where they are, but we're not giving up control of our IP?
Yeah, that's great. That's very interesting. I mean, perhaps we can come back at the end. I mean, I'd like to invite Juliet now to sort of, I think, give us an overview of some other places that I know that CMC and some of our colleagues there have talked about. So Juliet, would you like to join us on that part?
Okay, can everyone see that? Okay, so my company, brief introduction, my company is called Plugin Media, and we make games, apps and animation for children. We've been doing that since 2003. We've always kind of made a big point about working in a sort of transmedia place, because in our from our point of view, you've got to be where the kids are, and obviously they're right across the many multitude of platforms that are available to them. So in the summer last year, we also made some podcasts. We also sell digital music that we make, and we also sell physical products connected to our preschool brand TMO. So whilst David's talk very much focused on the facts and figures and the audience trends, I've decided to kind of focus on some actual content that's being made, but very much drawing on the sort of starting points that that David pointed to in his talk. There'll be a bit of overlap, but hopefully not too much. And I just want everyone to kind of view this as an opportunity to just kind of see what's going on, see a few case studies, and get excited about the opportunities that there are out there. None of these are projects that we've made, although I realise that I have got one that Dubbit has made. So I'll show you a slide of that in a moment. So okay, so just to begin with, I thought I would pick up where David left off, the metaverse. David focused very much on Roblox, but only a year ago, I think, very much the talk was about Fortnite Party Royale, and that's still very much space. There's been a trend for artists doing live concerts in Fortnite. There was Marshmello, I think, in 2019. Last year, I think it was Travis Scott. And I think just last week, an artist called Cascade did their new EP launch in the space. It's the party mode itself, Party Royale, is kind of violence-free party zone. It launched last year. There are vending machines where you can squirt burger sauce over your friends and mini games to play, very much in that kind of metaverse vein that David has just told you about. The next example I was going to show you is the Dubbit game. So this is LOL Surprise, a doll brand, and as David has said, many brands are now heading to Roblox, and there's more and more games that are being built within there that are featuring brands that have already been hits on other platforms or in the real world. In LOL Surprise, you can mix and match your characters' dolls, you can take part in dance-offs. So next, I wanted to focus a bit on digital learning. In particular, I wanted to have a look at what has been going on in TikTok. So again, as David mentioned, TikTok has been enormous for kids and has grown during the pandemic. I think when I just mentioned dance-offs, I think probably most people would think of TikTok as being the space where you go to learn dance moves. But I think towards the end of last year, there was an investment by TikTok to put, I think they put $15 million into European creators to seed learning content, and they did that under the hashtag Learn on TikTok. They also have begun trialing a Learn menu heading where you can just find content that's focused on learning. They've done partnerships with different cultural institutions. The image on the right here is from English Heritage, where they've done a set of videos. They've done walkthroughs of different castles and things that they look after, but they've also done sort of horrible history style short video content around facts about history and makes. They've done an awful lot to engage with celebrities, the rise of the edfluencer. The guy on the left is an American cosmologist called Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I've got Rachel Riley in the middle, and they're both using the platform to teach physics and maths in bite-sized chunks. And of course, there's an awful lot of UGC coming from teachers who are on board with TikTok and really making the most of it as a way to connect with their students. So next up, I thought I'd look a little bit more about social and co-viewing. So again, this was a trend that very much has been noted, that co-viewing, as a result of the pandemic, parents and kids are often inhabiting the same space and co-viewing and co-playing games together. Obviously, it's been going on for years, but it's become accentuated during the pandemic, and it's something that parents, when interviewed, have said that they wish to continue with, and it's been a nice place for parents and families to bond. And it's really hard to, I've chosen the Mandalorian here as an example. I think it's really hard to to remember that Disney Plus, certainly in the UK, is only a year old. It's only 18 months since it launched in the US. It's now got 95 million subscribers, and Disney Plus, as well as the other SVODs, are really focused on developing co-viewing brands that really that meet that demand for watching something with your kids. Next up, so this is Netflix House Party. It's called Netflix Teleparty, and this, again, in response to the pandemic, was really became a very popular thing to do, where groups of kids would sit and watch shows together via a simultaneous viewing, and there's an opportunity to comment live. I think there's so many platforms have been trying to replicate that social experience. And the next one, again, in a similar vein, and I think David mentioned this one, and this is House Party. I think as adults, and certainly in a sort of business context, we all tend to think about video chat as being a Zoom thing, but I think kids are tending to use other networks for that, particularly House Party. Again, that came up in David's figures, and they've done direct partnerships with different brands. Here's an example of Fortnite, where you can actually stream directly through your gameplay directly through House Party and chat with your friends as you go about it. And another one that David mentioned is Discord. Again, Discord, it started as a gamers chat platform. It wasn't supposed to be a kids platform, but it became a kids platform. And as David mentioned, they very much had to change their privacy settings to make sure that kids were safe on the platform. There are lots of different rooms on Discord, and brands are getting in on that and setting up their own rooms, but obviously kids are also making their own space to talk about the topics that interest them, and it's very much extended beyond gaming into other areas now. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, I just think this is a really interesting project, and I think there's going to be a lot more sort of happening in this space. So this is using Instagram, talking very much about older children now. This is a project that was made by the Kissinger twins, who are a production company based in Poland. It's a story of a 15-year-old girl, Anna, and it's told on Instagram via 15 episodes and 400 Instagram stories. And it's basically being told as Anna's diary. It's a kind of sci-fi thriller with an ecological bent. Anna discovers a portal into the future. She has to move to a new place, and we learn all about her through her diaries. And I think the creative possibilities of using Instagram are way beyond when I first started in interactive content, where it was all very much the choose your own adventure model. I think this opportunity for multi-threaded narratives is really huge with Instagram, and certainly with the other platforms that are coming through as well. David also mentioned how children and their parents were seeking out digital platforms for using for physical activity. Certainly this is again something that's come about very much as a result of the pandemic. Last year there was the Premier League Invitational, where we saw Premier League football stars playing FIFA football game, but with live Sky commentators. Obviously, when we weren't allowed to go into the stadiums, that was a new way to engage with both footballers and commentary. And of course, there's an eternal, an enduring interest in esports. The esports tournaments are huge. The Premier League is enormous, and something that children are very, very much interested in. The next example is one that's really super obvious to British school children. This was one of the huge successes of the pandemic, PE with Joe Wicks, which gave young children an opportunity to do their physical activity at home over YouTube. But he's been moving on to different spaces now onto apps. And I wanted to mention this next one as well, which is Cosmic Kids Yoga. I think the pandemic has brought about an interest in more mindful activities, and also I think what's interesting here is the fact that Cosmic Kids was already huge on YouTube, but there have been various legitimate concerns about safety on YouTube, and also it can be a challenging place to make money, and the business model changed quite radically last year when targeted advertising was no longer allowed on YouTube, and so I think a lot of YouTube creators were looking elsewhere. So Cosmic Kids has gone on to an app now. They've got over 1 million subscribers, and that sort of opportunity and benefit of having a walled garden for which to deliver video content to kids is definitely a trend that I think is very much here to stay. It's not all just about YouTube. So finally, just to continue that theme a little bit further, I thought I'd talk a little bit more about mindfulness and the opportunities that are there. You may remember Moshi Monsters from probably a good 10 years ago or so now. Moshi's back with Sleep Stories. I think it was only a year ago that they raised £10 million. They're definitely doing more and more. Their subscriber base as well is growing considerably, and these are sleep stories that calm children down, and they're also doing brand partnerships, and their kind of sister company, which is Calm, last year did some stories with Thomas the Tank Engine, so that was a brand partnership there. And I think when you're thinking about where your brand might go with publishing brands, I do think there's a big opportunity in this space, and of course some of it works across smart speakers as well as mobile apps. So that was my last case study for you. Sorry, I'm going to stop sharing and hand over to you, Neil, who I think is going to kick off some Q&A with us.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And I think in many ways, it's audio that I'd like to pick up on first from both of your excellent presentations there, because it's one of those really kind of lo-fi, media formats which people often ignore in the industry, of how important audio is, and also how important for the youngest kids audio becomes. I know, Juliet, you've worked a lot with your TMO series and a lot of songs and audio there. And I think this whole area of, like, perhaps where you had an app there, a bedtime app, a go to sleep application, and bringing in this sort of sense of well-being, and a digital device that actually can calm kids down after maybe a hectic day using screens and devices. And we all know how dependent we've become on them, but actually how important it is to get away from them at some parts of the day. I mean, what do you both, just, let's have a conversation on this really. What do you feel about audio and it's kind of almost re-emerged as a dominant media format, even though it's a very basic one? I mean, David, you want to kick off on this?
Sure. The first place to start is audio is reasonably inexpensive to produce. If you're making podcasts or something like that, it's much less than video. So it's an accessible medium for a lot of people with great creative ideas that don't have the resource or the connections to build for video. The other thing is, we found a couple things about audio. One is, and you sort of hinted at it here, parents view audio very differently from screen time. And I already talked about how I don't like the term screen time, but you do have to acknowledge that parents pay attention to it. They see audio completely differently. They co-listen in the car, they co-listen in the kitchen while they're cooking, but also they just perceive it differently when they see their child listening to a podcast, listening to an ebook, or an audiobook, or even or music than they do when they see them watching. It's become, audio has become more personal and private over time. I was just saying to someone the other day that, when I went off to college, I carried speakers that came up to my waist, and we all listened together, and we all, everyone in the room shared that. Now you mostly get it through your earbuds, and you share by sharing a file, or sometimes by passing one earbud over, but it's become a much more personal space than it once was.
Juliet, would you have anything to add to that? I mean, it's
yeah, I think there's just, there's some of it is coming through the popularity of podcasts for adults, and I think adults have fallen in love with audio again, and they're passing that down to kids, and there's also a joy, I think, in some of the simplicity of smart speakers, and I think when you look at some of the smart speakers that kind of are emerging for kids, I know that there's some children-specific smart speakers. They just really focus on audio alone, and there's a joy in that and a simplicity of a device that does one thing and does it well.
It's missing some of the cues that kids get from a tablet or a smartphone. So it can be very hard for kids to discover the content they want on audio, on smart speakers. You have to ask the question in the right way for the speaker's intelligence.
To another level, I suppose. We're still waiting for the technology to kind of come through, and for people to get used to using it, because I think you're right, David, there are quite a lot of settings and ways of speaking you have to learn. I mean, do you think there is something in sort of interactive audio that actually is interesting, that actually can provide a better, more playful experience to people, or is it just gimmicks?
I think absolutely there is. And I think if you start combining different platforms, so if you start combining audio with geolocation or things like that, the idea of being able to either play a game or even just get information by listening as you walk through the world is fascinating to me.
And there's been some really interesting board games that you've got a physical board game with pieces that you can sit around the table as a family, but you're taking clues or interacting with the smart speaker as you play. And I think that it's been quite an interesting way to interact with these devices as well.
Yeah, I mean, moving on to a bit, we have a session actually in the live event that's going with these pre-recorded events is on education. There's something called Super Simple that's going to be talking about their development for an educational preschool ideas, and also from a Spanish company called Odilo, who provides more of a traditional base for renting school books. This, I suppose, this is a terrible word, edutainment, but this sort of how home has become part of school now, and is that, do you think that some of that will remain, that parents have understood and people have understood how to sort of to have a sort of educational experience at home a little more? They know the apps to use, they know the places to go, and perhaps that's something that can always happen at home, because it's always, I think teachers are always happy when parents take on a bit of their role to educate their own children, and now perhaps parents can actually know where to go and have some experience in that. Do you think that will make publishers more interested in that space?
I think that I think certainly one of the it's like adults falling in love with audio and where trends start, but also the sheer amount of activity in the edtech space at the moment is really exciting. And there's some I just think about the journey that digital learning's been on over, I don't know, the last 20 or 30 years is enormous, but it's taken quite a long time to get the level of sort of stickiness and entertainment and quality on some content to really make it a rewarding and fulfilling experience that isn't just something that's used in a classroom alone because the teacher's told you to. So I think that's all incredibly good for the industry. I think there's some really fantastic content coming out, and there'll be more of it, and that brings the value up right across the board?
I think it's a really interesting triangular question with student, parent, and school. That from one dimension, when kids go back into physical school, when they're back in school full time, they will have been home for over a year in many cases, doing a lot of self-guided learning, doing a lot of self-motivated learning. And I'm not sure they're going to want to sit and listen to the sage on the stage in that model of learning. I think they're going to want much more autonomy in how they learn and what they learn. They're going to want to do more group learning, project-based learning, and how will schools adapt to that? You've got parents who've been their kids' teachers, or at least teacher supervisors for a long time. So will parents want to keep up with, will they say, well, wait a minute, I now have much better insight into how my child learns. I want more information from the school. I want more engagement school to home. And then we had an interesting case with a company called Go Noodle, where Go Noodle is an exercise videos that are used in schools. So when when the kids are getting hinky and you need to get them up and moving a little bit, you play a Go Noodle video and they move around for a while and then you settle back in. But kids were coming home and hacking teacher accounts, or finding ways to get the Go Noodle videos at home. And so the company looked at this and said, well, let's develop a home product. So we built games for them that are motion based. How you move is captured by the camera on the phone or the tablet and influences the game. But they're branching out into a lot more areas now because kids asked for it at home, not because they wanted to expand the market, but because they saw the market was asking for it.
Oh, that's very interesting. I mean, I think, taking your ideas from the market that gets directly and seeing where kids, where are kids going today, and actually doing some research and then going into these places directly, I suppose, is what publishers have always had to do in some ways. But now it's perhaps you find out these things earlier, you get to them quicker, and you have to react quicker. I mean, how would you say now, now that we're sort of, this is not a session on the pandemic, but the pandemic's always in our mind as we're sort of coming out of the other side. I mean, do you think there are some things that now will remain as, digital standards for kids in terms of where they go and where they'll be happiest now to spend their time, and perhaps parents to spend their money? Do you think there are some things that will never go back?
In the research that we've been doing about what kids anticipate 6 months, a year from now, American kids said they think they're still going to be in a good amount of virtual school, even if it's safe to go back to schools, that there will be this transformation, that more schooling will be done virtually, more homework will be done digitally. British kids are much more optimistic that they'll be back in the classroom. But at the same time, there are things that kids want to keep very much. They want to keep those family movie nights, the family viewing nights, and non-digital things as well. They want to keep the bike rides and the walks with the parents and things like that. For years before the pandemic, kids told us they wanted more time with their parents, and parents told us they wanted more time with their kids, and it just never seemed to happen until it was actually forced on them. And now it's, oh, well, why didn't we do this a lot sooner?
Well, it's interesting. British kids, Juliet, so they're always looking good to go back to school. Do you think there are any dominant features that you would say that will continue on after the pandemic in terms of some of the areas that you work in, or some of the places that you've seen kids go today?
I think, we're all very much embracing the hybrid at the moment, aren't we? And so I certainly think the next period will be very much of that model. There'll be a bit of what we inherited from the pandemic. I'm kind of interested to see if there is a massive swing around, back from being so home-based, and whether, once everyone's feeling confident and safe to do so, whether the knock-on effect will be more time spent outside. I think I read something today. There was a report in the Guardian newspaper today that said that kids growing up today are going for outside play 2 years later than their parents did. So obviously there's been huge concerns around safety, but hopefully there will be a swing back in that direction, really.
I wouldn't be at all surprised if kids put down their devices when as Juliet says, they feel more comfortable, feel more free to go out. The biggest thing that they tell us is, I miss my friends. I miss face-to-face time with my friends. I miss sport. So I think when they do feel comfortable, there will be a time when they'll put the devices aside and go out and play and be with their friends. Maybe if the device provides some support for that, maybe if it gives them games to play together, they'll come back. When we talk to companies, I say, don't worry about it. It's not you, it's them. They'll be back. But I think they'll need that liberation.
There's definitely a kind of energy that comes. They've never stopped being sociable. They've taken all these platforms like Discord and made them their own because they want to socialize. That's their primary directive. But actually, real life socializing, the energy that comes from them when they've experienced that, I think is very different. It's remarkable.
Yeah, it's almost the time for, I suppose, with the sunshine and spring now outside, it's almost time for me to go outside and run around a bit. I suppose, Juliet, you've got the sea near you, so it's always good to have some fresh air at the end of the day. But thank you to both of you. It's been great to talk on these few topics, and I'm so pleased that you could come and join us for part of the Bologna digital sessions for this year's Bologna Children's Book Fair, which is an online event. There will be more of these, so if you've enjoyed coming today and watching this video, we expect to hold more of these events more often during the year, and to have other guests from CMC, we would hope, because it's been great to collaborate on the CMC session. So anyway, thank you, David. Thank you, Juliet. And enjoy the sunshine.
Thank you much for the opportunity.
Thanks.